Welcome to r/LegalAdvice, where we read surprisingly interesting stories that don't end in a cliffhanger, I promise. If you are new around here, please feel free to subscribe to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right in. Bonus wages taken away after hours worked. I posted this in Personal Finance and they suggested I post here in Legal Advice. I also was not sure which flair to choose. I live and work in Nebraska and I'm curious if this situation is kosher at all, as a lot of my coworkers are upset about it. Over the last few months, my work has offered a shift pickup bonus. If you pick up a shift, you get extra money on top of what you would normally make an hour. Other than saying we get a bonus for shifts picked up, there has been no other communication about it, and everyone who picks up a shift, FTPT or PRN employees, have been getting the shift pickup bonus. Until today, one of the higher-ups texted all of the PRN employees and informed us that we no longer get shift pickup bonuses because we don't have scheduled days and work when we can, which is the definition of PRN. This seemed okay because sometimes they stop doing the bonus and bring it back later. But then they sent a correction text to tell us that for the previous pay period, no bonuses will be paid out, as it is our new company's policy that no one in my facility knew about until today. They are taking these bonuses away after we have already worked the hours and the pay period has ended. Until today, all employees worked under the assumption that they would get the shift bonus for any shift picked up and picked up shifts to get the bonus. A lot of my coworkers worked a lot to cover rent and other bills, and now this money is being pulled out from underneath them when they expected to have it. I could understand if this policy went into effect as of today, since no one knew about it, but to take the money away for days worked before today seems cruel and not kosher to me. What does anyone make of this situation? Guys, how would you deal with this situation if someone takes the money away for the days you have already worked? At least to me, that does not seem legal at all. User CMH Bob in the comments said, "I don't think they can take away a bonus after you have already worked the shift in question. You agreed to work that shift for a particular wage. They can absolutely end the policy for PRN employees in the future, but you worked those hours in the past expecting to be paid that bonus. Just how far back do they think they can claw that back?" Update: bonus wages taken away after hours worked. Even though my original post only had a few comments, I wanted to post an update because the few people who commented really helped. I filed a wage complaint last week and encouraged my fellow PRN aides to also file a complaint. In total, 7 of us filed a complaint with the NDOL. I received an email back from DOL pretty quickly with them asking for a lot of info and documentation about my side of the story. It was pretty late on Friday, so I did not hear anything back until today. Before I heard back from NDOL this morning, I got a text from the person who texted all the PRN aides, who was just a messenger for the main admin person, telling me I had a check waiting for me in the office for my bonus money. About 10 minutes after I got that text, I got a call from the person who took on the claims that were filed. She let me know that what my company was trying to do was not legal and that I should have a check waiting for me. She told me 7 of us filed a complaint and she reviewed them all and sent the admin a letter saying they could not take those bonuses away from us. PRN staff no longer will receive a bonus as of last week, but that is okay. Overall, this whole process ended well for the PRN aides. Thank you to the commenters who walked me through this and let me know this was not legal. We probably would have let this slide if I had not asked for help. And guys, I think this is a very important point in this story: never let injustice slide. Have you ever faced similar injustice at your workplace? Let me know in the comments. Daycare gave toddler 18 months medication against their own policies. Toddler had a severe allergic reaction and has been hospitalized. Posting for my friend Laura. Yesterday, Laura got a call from her kid's daycare that her son, Henry, 18 months, had been taken to the hospital in an ambulance. They did not tell her anything else at that time. According to Laura, EMS and the ER docs said Henry could barely breathe, was lethargic and swollen upon arrival. He had been given medication by the daycare employees and had a severe reaction to it. The daycare story is Henry was stung by a bee and they gave him Benadryl to counteract it, which they have previously told Laura would never do because administering medication to children is against their policies due to the liability. Furthermore, the pediatric ER doctor could find no evidence of a bee sting or bug bite of any kind anywhere on the child, leading both Laura and I to both wonder if the daycare workers gave Henry the Benadryl because he would not go down for his nap and the bee story is them trying to cover their asses. So the big question, where does she go from here? The word lawyer is rolling around pretty frequently, but what kind? How would she find one at a low cost? Is this actionable in a way that would be of benefit to Laura and Henry in court? Should she be looking into having them pay for his treatment and her missed time from work? She's not looking for a cash grab, but the kid's skin came off his face. They should do something. User 5tits in the comments said, your friend needs to find a personal injury attorney. Note, this is not the typical scenario for those attorneys, so she may need to meet with several attorneys. Almost all offer free consultations or initial visits. Virtually all will take the case on contingency, meaning they will front many, if not all, of the costs in exchange for a percentage of what she wins, but that does not always mean free. So she needs to make sure she understands how costs will work. That is not my field of law, but the question in those types of cases is 1. If the daycare owed a duty to the child, they did. 2nd, if the daycare breached that duty, I think they most likely did, but that depends on an additional information and might be disputed. 3rd, whether the child suffered an injury or damages, yes. And 4th, whether the injuries were caused by that breach of duty, it was. Lawyer will fight about how much damages are and about the breach of duty, but the thing to do now is to call personal injury attorneys and find one that A. will take the case and B. your friend believes will do a good job with the case. To be honest, I find this story absolutely insane. What would you do if the daycare gave your toddler medication against your own will and against their own policies? Let us know in the comments, and if you have watched until here, please feel free to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video to support me. Thank you so much in advance. Update to the toddler story from before. First, thank you to everyone who responded to the original post. Your help has been invaluable, so at this point the crap has hit the proverbial fan. The doctors did some pretty extensive blood work on Henry upon his admission to the hospital and the results are in. Henry overdosed on Benadryl. So it is pretty clear this was not an accident. There was no bee sting, the daycare loaded this kid up with Benadryl, presumably for nap time, in lethal doses for his age/size, and he had a reaction that nearly killed him. The daycare is mom right now and not talking. Laura is actively looking for a lawyer. Last I heard, the hospital was sending Henry home as he's out of danger, he's recovering, but it will be slow and painful. I'm actually baffled by the fact that a daycare gave that kind of medication to a toddler to make him sleep. Why the F would that be necessary? The next one is titled, Old co-workers are telling me my old boss talks to them about all the issues I'm having. Found out my therapist is my old boss's husband. I started seeing a therapist a couple of months ago, nothing wild, just general depression, winter weather getting to me, etc. It's been very helpful until recently. In the last few days, 2 of my old co-workers called me to say my old boss was saying things like, OP basically hates herself now, I heard she's not doing well, really depressed. These were phone calls and I did not record anything because it was so unexpected. My old boss fired me in June of 2017, we did not get along, general underperformance, no misconduct, just obviously did not leave on great terms. At first I thought it might be a friend of mine divulging things to another friend in the industry, but then after looking up said old boss, I see that her husband is my therapist, very common last name, so I would have never realized they were related. I realize this is obviously problematic with the therapist, but I'm not sure what to do about it. He practices out of a leased single office space, so there is no overarching practice management/administration to report to. I also don't know if what my old boss is saying is getting into legal issues or if it is just, well, rude. I still live in the same city and work the same type of job in a rather small/close-knit industry. So, on one hand, I'm worried about word traveling around our small community, but on the other, I'm worried about bad blood if I make too much of a fuss. Help. Edit, I'm now feeling reasonably confident about where to start with the therapist. However, I feel completely lost about what to do about my old boss, contact HR at the old employer, hope it just dies down. At this point, I have no proof that I could show, just saying I get phone calls and I don't really want to pit my old coworkers against their boss if that can be avoided. By the way guys, unfortunately I could not find any comments for this post, so let's head straight to the update. Update to the therapist's story from before. New development summary. There's still a lot of slow/bureaucratic stuff going on, but the most satisfying news is that my therapist is no longer practicing. I even saw the space he practiced out of listed as for sale on a real estate website while doing my own house hunting. New developments continued. Therapist was chatting about a client, me, to his wife, my old boss, that, it seemed, he really didn't know was his wife's old employee. Large company, closely knit but not minuscule industry. I have a very peculiar family dynamic, so I think he talked about that. However, enough bits and pieces of identifying info came up that she suspected it was me. Unbeknownst to him, she found my paper records in his office and dug through them, then thought it was a great idea to tell my old coworkers that I was depressed and had family issues. Neat. One of my coworkers put in her 2 weeks because of a relocating spouse shortly after, then agreed to write a formal statement of what she heard, which also helped a lot. Understandably, no one else was willing to because the company's already laid off so many people in the last year. Resolution in process. Therapist seems to be less in the wrong than I thought he was, though still in the wrong. Old boss is still awful. Therapist likely to receive some sort of reprimanding for both talking to his wife about me in that level of detail as well as insecure record keeping. I don't know if he will practice again. Thank you all, you were a huge help and a confidence boost that me complaining about this would actually get it somewhere and not just create more stress in my life. It's apparently led to a ton of drama at my old workplace, which has been sort of pleasant to hear updates about from afar. Glad to not be there anymore. I also found a new therapist who's great, and she's really helped validate that the old guy and his wife was one bag egg in a sea of otherwise well-meaning people. And by the way guys, I'm curious to know, have you ever been fired from a workplace before? If you have, please feel free to share the reason why you have been laid off. The Poor Frustrated Monkey, posted by user MDM on our subreddit r/ripe stories. I'm not sure if this is more of a Tales from Retail or revenge story, maybe it is best to describe it as both. I worked in a boutique model train store in a very upscale mall. It was a slow weekday during the early morning, so nobody in the shop except me. A man walked in looking like he was just browsing. I was fixing a tiny N-scale train at the front desk where the tilts were. Employees were encouraged to work on trains or build models during slow times as it drew attention from passing foot traffic and brought people in. After a few minutes of browsing, he made his way up to the counter with a wooden train whistle. When blown, it sounds like a train's steam horn, very cool. He said nothing to me, so at first I did not notice him as I was bent over a tiny locomotive with fine tools trying to fix it. Obviously, I was remiss in my inattention, so he did the only natural thing, he snapped his fingers to get my attention. I find this gesture particularly disrespectful. You snap your fingers to get your dog's attention, not another human being. Retail smile on. How may I help? I say in that overly saccharine way that all retail staff use on jackasses. He says nothing to me, is not really paying attention to anything happening at the counter. He scans the shop shelves and drops the toy in front of me. So now I am demoted from dog with finger snaps to get my attention to not even being there. He treats me as if I am invisible, not even a word said back to me. So I scan the toy. Will there be anything else? I ask sweetly. I am full on passive aggressive at this point. I don't like being passive aggressive, but for retail staff it is sometimes the only way to get some measure of redress for a crappy customer. Again, he says nothing, merely pulls out his wallet and removes a $100 bill. I hold out my hand for his money, he tosses it onto the counter, it flutters off the counter and over the edge to land at my feet. I stood there for a moment, incredulous over his absolute lack of any common courtesy. I pointedly look at my outstretched hand, then at the bill on the floor at my feet before raising my eyes to his face. He looked away and mutters begrudgingly, "Sorry." I bent down to retrieve the bill and make change and bag the toy. I put the bag toy on the counter between us and turn to the till to make his change. I then proceed to miscount his change back to him several times, making as many mistakes as I can. That was $12.34 and here is, I put a penny in his palm, $12.35. Now I put a nickel into his palm, $12.40. And here is, I put a quarter in his palm, there is, I'm so sorry, I lost my count. I'm so stupid. And I took the small amount of change out of his hand to try again. I spent several minutes of dithering and not letting him have more than a handful of change before taking it all back and starting over, keeping the other bills in my hand and out of his reach and acting like numbers and money were brand new concepts to me, all the while apologizing profusely for my stupidity. He just glared at me, sighing in annoyance, obviously getting quite irritated but wanting his money. He finally let out a really loud huffed breath. I braced for a verbal onslaught, but he said nothing, just snatched the bills out of my hand, grabbed the toy, turned around and stomped out of the shop. He scattered the coins I had in my hand on the floor and shouted over his shoulder that I was a effing idiot. I picked up the coins, dropped them in a charity bucket and went back to fixing the locomotive, feeling relaxed and pleased that my extremely petty, passive-aggressive revenge had worked. I do feel like I should have risen above the situation and be the better person, but I hate it when people assume retail workers are somehow undeserving of any common courtesy merely because we are in the service industry. What a donkey. And guys, unfortunately we have reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's content, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel in case you haven't already. I hope you have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow.